how does Shipyard help someone do all these things, not just for marketing, but more along the lines of getting data to where it needs to be and doing more of these automated processes?
Yeah. So on Shipyard, a big problem that we were trying to solve for is there's a lot of monotonous development work that goes into building some of these solutions. There's tons of hours wasted on just being able to connect to a different services API to get some sort of function running, or to be able to get your data downloaded from a particular database, whether it's something like Snowflake or BigQuery. Out of the gate, we build out a lot of low code blueprints, which are doing very specific actions against a vendor. So, for example, if you want to work with Snowflake, we have blueprints to be able to download the data using a SQL query as a CSV. You can also upload a CSV to a table with it. You can execute a query directly against the database as well to do any sort of like data management type queries. So that's one example. For another service, something like Google Sheets, you can upload a CSV to the sheet. You can download a sheet as the CSV. You can clear the entire sheet to try and keep things up to date in different services. And one more example I can kind of give off the top of my head is like messaging services like Slack, having built-in blueprints to be able to send an alert that is just a single message, or you can send an alert with a file, conditionally based on whether the file exists or not. So these sort of setups allow you to quickly say, hey, I want to download sales data from Snowflake, and I want to find any of the customers that recently made a large sale, and I want to take those customers and send an alert on Slack to the sales team and say, hey, you should reach out to these folks and like make sure they're highly engaged. That's like a positive alert that you might have. You could do the
Mhm.
opposite too, which is people that take some sort of action that indicates they're about to churn, so that the salesperson gets a notification so they can reach out to them and try and prevent that from happening. That would take a lot of engineering effort under normal circumstances. And for us, it's very much plug and play of being able to download data from one service, send it to another service. But as a practitioner myself, I realize that can't do everything for you. That gets you like 80% of the way there. So while we have these blueprints, we make sure that you can run your own code as well. So all those marketing solutions that I talked to you about, all those were highly custom to like our naming structures and the way that a client's feed was actually formatted. So it wasn't something that we were able to always reuse all the time. So it might be something where we were creating custom Python scripts. And the beauty of what you have on Shipyard is that you can combine the low code blueprints with your own scripts. And if you have a script that you need to repeat continuously, you can turn that into a low code blueprint as well, so that someone else can use it without having to know a lick of code. But yeah, that's really how things are structured on our side. And so we don't take a marketing specific approach, even though that's what our background was. It's very much about how do you take these generic things that you might want to build with your data and break them down into their just core components that you can string together to accomplish some sort of larger solution that you envision for your organization.
Yeah, what I'm noticing in the like data slash B2B world right now is there's this trend where you're either very specific like use case solution or
Mhm.
kind of general purpose. And some of the use cases you mentioned is not only the things that Shipyard does, but I heard a lot of like product led growth motions in
Yeah.
there where, hey, a lead comes in, it's a certain persona or company or whatever, you want to send a Slack notification to your sales team, you can do that with Shipyard.
Yeah.
But there's also very specific technologies built like Pocus and Calixa that are specifically for that use case. And
Mhm.
so it sounds like while Shipyard can do those things, what you're positioning yourself as is it's a little bit more general purpose and geared towards like data engineers who are trying to build more of these systems in place.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. And when it comes to data orchestration, we find oftentimes that people that come through our doors aren't necessarily looking for data orchestration. They are looking for, how do I get service A connected to service B? But if you are just an A to B solution, that's all you're ever going to be able to do for the client. Like, our goal is, we'll bring them in the door with A to B, but then they can connect B to C and C to D and D to E, and all of a sudden they have a larger workflow that actually like has every touch point of the data connected together. So if something breaks, they know about it immediately, and C, D, and E don't actually run. Someone gets an alert, they know that something broke along the way, and they have a little bit more like sustainability and reliability in how their data is deployed. But I think you're absolutely correct there. It is very much a generic solution builder, but part of that comes from like my experience using tools like Zapier. I'm going to pick on them for a second, of being like a low code tool, where I've used Zapier in the past, and it's a really good tool for being able to connect two services together. But inevitably with most low code tools, you run into some sort of issue where, oh, it can't do quite what I need it to do. And as an engineer, what that means is, okay, well, I still have to get this project done. So now I have to write a script that runs on its own to subsidize what the low-code tool couldn't do. And so, like, our theory is, why not bring them together? So, like, you could write your own script to ingest data, or you could use someone like Fivetrain or Stitch. We don't care, but you can like actively connect that to running your DBT jobs. They could run on DBT Cloud. You could be running it on like DBT Core, which just uses Python. So it's really more of a like, we'll get you most of the way there with like an A to B, but inevitably when you run into that situation, build it all together rather than having to deal with some sort of situation that forces you to maintain scripts that live separately from other processes. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm starting to go into some more of I'm not a developer, so I'm using no code tools like Zapier to do a lot of automations and running into the exact same things that you're mentioning. So I have to go find someone who can help me write a Python script for something really basic.
And then you have two tools that you're managing. So like
Exactly.
that's the normal. So it's trying to figure out, how do we shift away from that being the norm so that engineers and non-engineers can live in harmony, like in the same platform. So
yeah. So when we zoom out and look at Shipyard, what's your focus for the business right now? How are you growing? What are your challenges that you're facing right now?
Yeah, there's two really big focuses that I have at the moment. The first one for us is expanding our integrations and partnerships. My goal is to make sure that all of these different data tools that are popping up in the landscape are data tools that we're able to actively have blueprints for, so that no matter what tools people are using in their stack, they're able to connect them together to other established or even new players in the space. So that looks like really right now we have a lot for like data storage, for data warehouses, for messaging services, but it's us expanding out to support things like data catalogs and data observability tools and visualization tools and other things kind of in that space. So that's a real big focus probably over the next year or so, trying to make sure that we continue to expand those and make sure that all of them are running in exactly the same sort of mannerism and running sustainably and having improved logging so that we might be able to like analyze how they perform over time and stuff better. But that's one of the bigger focus. Yeah.
Let me pause you right there. So this is actually a different talking point, so I won't jump into that yet. But with all these new data tools coming out, what you're saying is, hey, great, use all of them. You eventually have to connect them. You should use us to connect them. Yes. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Because when you have all these tools and they aren't talking to each other, that's how you get into the issue where you have 10 tools running scheduled systems and you don't know what ran when, which potentially took longer, that screwed up some other tool that delivered bad data that the business user found and told your team about a week later, and now they're mad because you didn't find it. Yeah, that's what we're trying to solve for. You have all these tools, like link them all together so you know what broke when, you can deal with it immediately, you can like send proactive alerts so that people internally know, hey, we're aware this data broke and it affects these things. But yeah, that's kind of our play in this space. As there's more tools, let's connect them all together and make it super seamless to be able to see end to end how your A to B solutions are connected all together.
Awesome. That's really smart. All right, what's the number two focus?
Number two focus for us is just improving the developer experience in general. And when I say developer, I mean it could be citizen developer, anyone that's actively using the platform. Our goal is to try and make sure that we have the right sort of power features in place so that you can do really like unique type workflows. So like one thing we just released was Webhook Parameters, which allows you to basically take data from another tool and react to it. So like if someone clicks a button in Slack, being able to like specifically update the message where the button was clicked, or being able to manage your like project management services. So when someone like kicks off a project and puts it into a new field that they're finished with it, it might be able to like knock it over to some other team so that they can do QA or something like that. But the possibilities become endless with stuff like that. But we're trying to make sure we have those power features, but they're really simple to use, and that the interface remains snappy, friendly, and that you're able to develop within the platform itself at all times. I'd say right now we do a decent job where it's very easy to set up things in the platform, but we have certain things where it might be a little bit more difficult to verify, oh, that thing that you just added in, that it will work 100% correctly. So you have to run the whole thing to verify, oh, did that work? Oh, no, it didn't. So I have to go back and change it. So it's figuring out how do we make that easier by allowing people to like start from the middle of their workflows, or being able to develop code directly in our platform rather than having to like run it locally and then upload it to the system. So it's really just improving the experience, making it snappy, and making sure that people are able to develop seamlessly directly in the platform.
Got it. And so that second one seems very much focused on a product, and the first one is really around go-to-market, which is what I love geeking out about. So I'm curious, there's a lot of tools in the space right now that I imagine you're trying to spin up partnerships with. What sort of challenges are you running into with growing and building out these partnerships and deciding who to work with?
Yeah, I think the hardest part about it from the partnership perspective is that every tool is brand new and nobody knows exactly like what to do with it and how to connect them together. So the established players, it's really easy to build out blueprints for because people have a lot of existing use cases. They're tried and true technologies that people have been using for a while. For some of the younger technologies, it's a little bit scrappier to try and figure out, okay, how do you make something that's like useful that you could integrate into someone else's workflow? Who is actively using this that I might be able to bring in? Because in a few instances, like it's not necessarily our customers that are actively asking for some of the integrations, although that definitely happens. It's us trying to proactively say, hey, how can we help you, this new tool, be able to help your customers connect what they're doing in your tool to every other tool in the data stack? Like it's a win-win situation there, but coming up with the right sort of use cases, figuring out how you effectively articulate that, how you build something that is inherently like useful for the like less technical users of those platforms. That's really where the trickiness kind of lies. And being honest, we're still trying to figure out our whole like partnership program and what that generally looks like, how we like to partner with external players, because we have worked with the more established players, which we just have to have the integrations for. It's not necessarily something where we've like built out the established partnerships. So I'm kind of using this as a shout out too. If there's any data tool out there, someone that's running a tool that wants to work with us, reach out. I'd love to be able to partner with you and build out an integration.
We actually work with a couple other folks in a data space. Somehow we've managed to become known for working with companies that are very technical. So I'll actually shoot you an email after this, seeing if you're already working with these companies or not.
Yeah.
All right. So I mentioned this earlier, but the data tooling ecosystem is kind of going through a boom. There's lots of funding going on, even with kind of this market conditions. Mm-hmm. And I know a bunch of people that are doing data tooling startups right now. And there's this phrase of like the modern data stack that I think is still being defined, but what's your take on the current state of this ecosystem, and how do you think about differentiation and cutting through the noise?
Yeah, right now it's definitely in an interesting stage where I don't have the right term for it off the top of my head, but it's we're seeing a like fragmentation in the space because every data practitioner has said like, oh, I dealt with this very specific problem in the data space. I'm going to build a tool around it. And they're very powerful tools that excel at one very specific thing, but you end up in the situation we were talking about earlier where now you have 5 to 10 sort of data tools to manage internally. And so I don't know how long that's going to last for before we start seeing an inevitable consolidation in terms of what these tools can do. Like a really good example is that there's the idea of these reverse ETL tools, if you've ever heard of them. Instead, an ETL tool gets data from a SAS tool into your database. Reverse ETL gets it out of your database and into the SAS tool. But that's kind of just like hanging out on its own right now. And I really feel like, okay, these ingestion providers are probably going to provide a holistic view that allows you to both load data in and out of the data warehouse. Like that's a natural consolidation that I see kind of happening over the next 2 to 3 years. And you see that through things like Airbyte acquiring Grouperoo, and I feel like there was another one recently that I can't remember off the top of my head. But the consolidation is inevitable. But right now, I think there's just like these very specific pain points that people are trying to go after. And eventually, like those components will start to be those tools will start to be components of those larger tools in the data ecosystem. And I'm curious how it's going to shake out. A lot of it might be through acquisition. Like I just saw Databand was acquired by IBM, I think, as they're in like an observability type platform for everything you're running in the space. So I could see that happening more and more, but the consolidation is going to happen, especially as people start tightening their belts with the like economy the way it is right now. I see things definitely kind of shifting more that consolidated direction.